How do you do, wacky weeaboos? My name is Greg, and this is Bigandstuff. Now, before we get started, I do have a mission for you. I would like you to preemptively strike that like button. Okay? Just like it right at the top of the video before you've seen any of it. If the video sucks, you can unlike it. It's easy peasy. Just press the button again. But I want you to like it right now. You got it? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Now, the topic that I would like to discuss today is a very small, very little known indie series called the MCU. Now, I'm sure you've never heard of it before, but it's a movie series about a bunch of superheroes that all take place in the same universe. Pretty fun concept, right? So this series is split into phases. You've got 5 phases now. Phases are sets of movies. You know, each one tells a smaller story that leads into a larger story. And, the first 3, everybody seemed to like them quite a bit. They performed really well. Everybody was enjoying them. The story, the overarching story, kind of ended with the 3rd phase, which culminated in Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame. Maybe you have heard of those. They were slightly better performing than the rest of the movies. Those movies formed a really satisfying conclusion for a lot of people. And so when they continued the series past that into phases 4 and now 5, there was a bit of concern, a bit of skepticism among people that, the story is over. What's the point of keeping it going? We finished it. And so they have to kind of be won back. And at this point, it doesn't seem like this new slate of movies is really doing that for people. Phases 4 and 5 have probably been the most heavily criticized of the entire franchise up to this point. And there seems to be a general sentiment going around that the series is in decline. It's fell off. L plus ratio plus touch grass, right? Nobody's watching these movies. They all suck. The VFX are bad. The stories are bad. The performances are bad. Everything about them sucks. Fuck the MCU. That seems to be generally the consensus right now among people on the internet. And I do have a bit of a spicy take. I still like the MCU. I still have fun with it. Every time I go to the movies and watch an MCU film, I'm having a good time. But I definitely can see why some people are feeling the way that they're feeling. At worst, they're mid, and at best, they're pretty great. And honestly, this set of movies, this phase 4 and now 5, there have been some bangers. I think even universally, people have generally liked Shang-Chi, Spider-Man No Way Home, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Moon Knight. All of these movies and shows, Loki, WandaVision, all of these were really well received. I think the biggest problem right now is, 1, the series already ended and it's got to win people back. And 2 is that we've had just such a massive onslaught of movies and shows. It's been going absolutely sicko mode, releasing a million shows and a million movies over the past couple phases. I mean, in phases 1, 2, and 3, we would get maybe 2 or 3 movies per year and no shows. And now it feels like there's just so much content coming out from the Marvel Cinematic Universe that it definitely feels like they're going for more of a quantity over quality approach, especially with the whole debacle surrounding the visual effects, underpaying people and rushing the projects. It has resulted in some mediocre and sometimes even kind of rough looking CGI in some of these more recent projects. But I would argue that if you go on a case by case basis and compare, movie to movie between a current universe project and a prior project from phases 1 through 3, on average, they really haven't gotten that much worse. I think you still have the same ratio of solid movies to mediocre movies to kind of a little bit rougher movies. I feel like the ratios are still the same. We've just gotten so much more content as a whole that it seems like there's more of the rougher content than the positive content. But I feel like the ratio is still pretty much the same. I mean, if you compare like Thor: Love and Thunder from phase 4 to Thor: The Dark World from phase 2, I mean, is Love and Thunder really that much worse or better? I mean, they're kind of equivalent movies. I feel like their strengths and weaknesses are in different places from each other. But in terms of overall quality, I don't see either of them being, that much better or worse than the other. And that's kind of been the same sentiment that I've had throughout most of these. Every phase has had some bangers, some boppers, and some kind of weak stuff that, they all have the same amount of good and bad content, basically, was what I'm trying to say. And I think this whole superhero fatigue, Marvel Universe fatigue issue has been kind of the same debate that we've been having for 10 plus years now. I remember even all the way back in phase 2, people talking about that we're getting fatigued of the series. And, maybe they were, but the movies still do really well to this day and people still watch them. So I feel like this is just kind of a factor more of being where we are in the story than it is of the actual quality of the stuff that Marvel is putting out these days. To explain what I'm talking about a little bit here, we just finished phase 3, a couple years ago, and that was this huge culmination. It was everything leading up to that was building to this massive culmination of storylines that all came together, and they really wrapped things up and concluded them in a super satisfying way. And after that, people are like, well, the story's done. We don't we don't need more. But, if the more is good enough, then I guess we'll take it. But we don't need more. And as of right now, Marvel has been kind of, they're resetting. We're in basically phases 1 and 2 again of this new storyline. We're in the same spot that we were back then as far as this new story goes. So if you're expecting it to hold up that same standard of storytelling, we have to set things up now, We're not in the culmination phase of the MCU anymore. We're in the build-up phase. We're starting back from the beginning. We got new characters, settings, concepts, storylines, all this stuff. They're just laying the foundations for it. None of it's been resolved. None of it's been paid off. None of it's been culminated to yet in the way that people are kind of used to from phase 3, because phase 3 was all about culmination, and now we're back to building the foundation again. And I think over the course of the next 2 phases, even if the quality of the movies doesn't change that much, I think the sentiment around them is going to be a lot more positive, just because what people are looking for from these movies isn't happening in the current slate in phases 4 and 5. Phases 4 and 5 are all about setting up, and you can't have payoff without setup. That's what made phase 3 work so well. But if you go back to phases 1 and 2, I feel like they're on par in terms of quality with the current phases. If you compare the best movies of phase 4 to the best of phase 1, and the worst of phase 1 to the worst of phase 4, if you compare, across the board there, I think you're getting pretty similar results to what you used to. It's just that we're so oversaturated with content that it seems like it's a little rougher than it was. So hopefully it's building to something, and hopefully we're able to see where it goes. This is such a rambly ass video. I have no idea if this is going to make for a decent video or not. Anyway, I hope you didn't unlike the video, and I hope you do subscribe. We're going to be doing a full tier list of the MCU at some point on the channel, probably on the podcast. So stick around for that if you're interested. Otherwise, see you next time for Guardians 3. Adios.